Hey everybody, I hope that you have enjoyed getting to know the Old Testament. I know it's been fast, it's been quick, but I hope you've gotten that big picture vision. And today what I'm going to try to do is one of the favorite things I do in the Old Testament class, whether I teach it in the classroom or online, is tie the Old Testament together with the New Testament. I don't have a lot of time to do that. You will be taking the New Testament class if you haven't already, but maybe this will make some connections for you in the big picture storyline. So let me jump right into it here. This will be the last video that I'll be doing in the class. It's been great to have you, and I hope that you've learned a lot and gotten a lot out of the class. So let's talk about connecting the Old and New Testament. You might remember as we surveyed the Old Testament, we looked at how Genesis 1 through 11 set up this whole thing that creation was perfect, everything is the way it was supposed to be, the way God intended it to be, got messed up with human sin, rejection of God and his way, and how that it wasn't just one person, but how it expanded and how this disorder came to the earth. Chaos came about because human beings wouldn't follow God's way. All of the Old Testament is this story about God fixing it and restoring his creation. He does that in some various ways through the section that we looked at in the Pentateuch, or the Torah, the former prophets, or the historical narratives, the later prophets, and then the writings that we just looked at this last week. These are all part of it. But if I had to summarize and say, how does God try to solve this problem? How does he get things back restored? Well, I would say that he has to deal with that original problem of sin that occurred in Genesis 3. Early on in the first week, we talked about how sin involves at least these 5 things, maybe more. Sin involves listening to a false voice. People deciding to, we'll listen not to God, but we'll listen to some other voice, whether that's a serpent or other people or myself. I think about things better, so I should listen to my own voice, my own inner voice, rather than God. Sin involves a false view of God, a view that God cares, but he doesn't have enough power or control to do anything, so I can't trust him to take care of my problems. Or God is in control, but he doesn't care. That's another potential problem, right? That he could do something about it, but he doesn't. Or that God can't be trusted or believed. He's just out for his own good. He wants his way, and he doesn't have the human best interest in mind. I would summarize this in this statement that God created us in his image to be like him, but instead we keep trying to make God in our image. We want God to be what we want him to be, and we want him to do for us what we want him to do for us. But sin involves this false view of God. It involves a false view of self, that I have to take care of myself, that God can't be trusted because I can't trust him. I need to take control and charge. I need to make sure my life needs are met and all my wants are met. We've seen this in the characters of the Old Testament, people not trusting God but doing things their own way to assure their safety and their happiness and what they want to happening. Sin involves a false view of sin, then, that there's no consequences to living my own way. Even though God said there'd be a curse and death and separation and things would fall apart, God's simply lying. Good things will come my way if I do things my own way, if I go against God. And remember, sin is not just doing bad things, it's doing things away differently than God intended it to be. It's not listening to God. So there's this idea of a false view of sin, and then a false view of creation, that creation is not God's, that he made for us to be stewards of, like he appointed us to take care of things, but rather we get to use everything in creation for our own purposes, or our own satisfaction, or our own happiness. So I use and abuse all of the things in creation so that I assure my happiness and I get good things. This is the problem of sin. Well, what is the solution to this? I want to suggest to you that in the big picture story, the solution is revelation of who God is and response to that revelation with the faith of human beings. So all through the whole story, we see this is the solution. What's going on in the Old Testament is there's revelation of who God is, both through his word and through his actions. So when we look at the Pentateuch and the books of Genesis and Exodus and Deuteronomy, God does something. He does something to save Abraham. He does something to save the Israelites and Moses. God acts, and that shows us that he does care, that he does love, that he is a God who cares. He doesn't abandon us. He's not unpowerful. He can handle all these things. We can trust him. And not only that, he loves us enough and cares for us to bear with us even when we mess up, right? So his actions and his word through the Torah, his word through the prophets, through the judges, and in all the poetic, all these sections give us word and action of God and testimony that God is actively involved in his world doing something. And it's this revelation of who God is that corrects our false view of God, that corrects our false view of ourselves, that corrects our false view of sin and all those things. Correcting that, getting a right view of God and responding to this God with faith to say, I will trust him with my life, is what the Old Testament's all about. So let's move on to the New Testament. Now see, the Old Testament just ends there, right? So Judaism today is still looking for God to bring this story to completion. They're still looking for a Messiah, a way for God's kingdom to come on earth. They're still waiting for this Messiah, right? But Christianity adds the New Testament to this story. That's what the Bible is, Old and New Testament, right? So the New Testimony is this New Testament. So let me give you a quick overview of that. If we look at the New Testament, it is 27 books. The events contained in the New Testament cover the years between 5 BC and approximately 100 AD. Different debates about when things got written and all that. You'll study that more in the New Testament. But let me look at the big picture. Just like we had those 4 sections in the Old Testament, there's kind of 4 sections in the New Testament. There's the Gospels, there's the book of Acts, there's the letters, and there's the book of Revelation. The Gospels are like the New Testament Exodus. They kind of replace this story of Moses and the Exodus and the beginning of this new people of Israel. Instead, we have the narrative of the life and teaching of Jesus, with the significance of his life, death, and resurrection, and how he brings disciples and starts a new family for those who believe in him, right? So the question, who is Jesus and what's he up to? And then the book of Acts is like the historical books in the Old Testament. It gives the sense of what is the history and beginning, and what does it mean to follow Jesus as a Christian and as a group of people. In the Old Testament, we have the people of Israel. In the New Testament, we have the new Israel, the new people of God, the people of God who incorporate Gentiles. And so the book of Acts is about how is God bringing all things to completion and fixing all these things from Genesis chapter 3 through 11, right? The letters are kind of like the prophets. This is living for God as his people. Just like in the Old Testament, we had God saying, this is the way to live as my people. Now we have these letters from leaders who give us guidance and theology. Paul wrote many of the letters in the New Testament, and then you have some general letters written by some others. But this is all like, how do we live as Christians? And then the book of Revelation, the last book in the Bible, is like this thing of, how does it all end up? How will God bring all this to completion? That's what the story is about. So again, I think you'll find, just like in the New Testament, in the Old Testament, a revelation of who God is. In the New Testament, the story continues with revelation of who God is. But now it's not just word and action, but the word becomes flesh in Jesus. God says, they're not getting it. How do I get them to understand who I am and what I'm like? The revelation of who God is shows up in Jesus. And response of faith is still what the human response to this should be. Some continuity and discontinuity with the Old and New Testament. Some of the things that are similar, I get some of this from a textbook I use in my Old Testament class by Walton and Hill, the Old Testament Today. Jesus is the fulfillment of all the promises of God in the Old Testament. And you see there's similarity of the view of God, who he is and what he's like. There's no difference between who God was in the Old Testament and New Testament. He wants the same things. He desires. He still loves. He's a God who wants to lead people to salvation and deliverance. The law of love. How do you live life to its fullest? You live according to God's way, the way of love. And then social justice. Life has to be lived with others. There is no relationship with God. You can't say you got things right with him if you're not living a life with other people that's a life of love and goodness. That's all the same in Old and New Testament. In the New Testament, though, this becomes attached to the work of Jesus Christ. He becomes the one who reveals who God is, and he is the one who fixes what was wrong with the world, because Jesus perfectly trusts in God even when he is dying on a cross. Even when it seems like everything's against him, he has a perfect faith in his Father to deliver him. So the work of Jesus, Messiah, the restoration, salvation, the nature of Christ, who he is and what he's like, and how that Jesus is like God, and the coming of the Holy Spirit, and the character of the church, these are new things. Again, I wish I had more time to go into detail on it, but I think for the sake of this lesson, I just want to paint this picture that the Old Testament story continues in the New Testament. And so you see the problem that is raised in Genesis 3, and really 3 through 11, is resolved in the rest of the Old and New Testament. God is revealing himself to us so that we may respond in faith and get rid of some of those false views, the false view of God, the false view of ourselves, the false view of sin, the false view of creation, the false voices that we listen to. God is calling us to listen to his voice in Jesus as we move to the New Testament. Just some quick passages to look at. Jesus comes in Matthew 5, which is part of the Sermon on the Mount. Don't think that I've come to abolish the law. I've not come to abolish, but fulfill it. This is Jesus' own words. I'm not trying to get rid of what was there before. I'm fulfilling all that it was meant to be. So the Old Testament and the law of the Old Testament points to Jesus coming, and what God was up to, Jesus is up to in the New Testament. Here's some great passages. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came to being through him. Without him, nothing came into being. This means this Word that was with God was part of creation, right? In him was life, and the life was the light of all people, and not just Israel, but all people. And see, this true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. Well, who is this Word? And if we continue in John chapter 1, you see, he was in the world came into being through him, yet the world didn't know him. He came to his own. He came to Israel, and they didn't accept him. But to all who received him, this is Jesus, who believed in his name, he gave them power to become the children of God. Not born according to the will of human beings, but the will of God. The Word of flesh, or the Word became flesh and lived among us. It wasn't enough for God to just speak word. He became one of us so that we might know what he was like. You see that in verse 18. No one has ever seen God. It is God, the only Son, who is close to the Father's house, and he has made him known to us. So this knowledge that we get of God in the New Testament is a knowledge that comes through knowing Jesus. When you see Jesus, you've seen God. That's exactly what Hebrews chapter 1 says. Long ago, God spoke in many ways through the prophets, but in these last days, he's spoken to us, how? In his Son. Not just a word, but the Word became flesh. This Son of his, Jesus, is the reflection of God's glory and the exact imprint of God's very being. He sustains all things by his wonderful power. See, Jesus has done something to reveal to us who God is. That he loves us, cares, that he wants to redeem, and he invites us to respond to faith. That is what the New Testament and the Christian story is all about. Revelation ends then with this huge thing. Again, I may run out of time here, but in Revelation 21, you see there's this holy city that comes down from heaven, and a loud voice. God lives with people. He dwells with them, and he wipes tears from their eye. Death is no more. There's no more crying and pain. Things are the way they were supposed to be, and this is an open invitation to all people that he has put on earth. Revelation 22 has this language that takes us back to Genesis and the Garden of Eden. There's a river flowing, and there's fruit growing, and there's trees and tree of life, and there's no more any night because God is the light, and people will reign with him forever and ever. This story of the New Testament, it solves the problem. And so when you read the Bible from beginning to end, you see it is God saying, this is the way it was made, it got messed up, and this is what God has done in Christ to fix it.